And I believe we've arrived to our last presentation. I don't know because I wasn't reading the numbers.
Yes.
Is this right? All right, okay, all right, back on track. And it's dealing with job training and education. Education is often disruptive for youth who are experiencing health instability. In addition to GED and other traditional educational programs, more programs are needed to provide hands-on training, job readiness, and opportunities to earn income while receiving training. Keywords to think about, flexible financial aid, apprenticeships, and affirming schools. Presenting this last topic, oh, this is Angelica Ross. Hey there, I called you earlier.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Happy waiting. So yes, I co-facilitated the employment and job training sessions with Ebony Davis from Affinity, the board president at Affinity. My name is Angelica Ross. I work with the Trans Life Center. I am the TransWorks coordinator, so I coordinate the employment program for transgender and gender nonconforming individuals. It's a Chicago House project. I also work with the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force as a national mentor for their Trans Leadership Academy. I kind of travel around the country and do different workshops around teaching trans people how to have more advocacy and lobbying for things that are important to them. So, let me just jump right into it. So there are a couple different sections here. So with the transgender and gender nonconforming topic, we talked about expanding the Know Your Rights training, and when we talked about that, it was mostly around trans people and gender nonconforming people having a very deep understanding of what their rights are with employment, knowing that the Illinois Human Rights Act protects gender identity, even though the Illinois Human Rights is a little confused with gender identity, putting it under sexual orientation. Do an education and marketing campaign on building awareness and education regarding hiring transgender people. Work with Pride at Work to bring awareness to their awareness building project. Explore existing policies to see where there can be improvements, city, county, state laws. Ask LGBTQ social enterprises to provide transitional employment for youth. And create internships funded through HRC 106-week tracks. Now I wanted to kind of just read over all of those so I can give you the real deal. So yeah, in these sessions, what really came up a lot around this was, and let me just make sure I don't, okay, perfect. So what really came up was the whole idea of storage. Some of the youth were talking about, well, if I am going to go either apply for a job or try to do some job training or do anything, where do I put my stuff in the meantime? What it came down to for me when we were talking a lot about this was that we talk about a lot how, you know, youth are expected to go to school, adults are expected to go to work. And so when you don't go to either, where do you belong? And so I think it's not only an issue of where does their stuff belong, but where do they belong? A lot of the youth talked about the shelters opening up at some point at night, but that they have to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of the day until that shelter opens. So this whole big ordeal of where do I belong? Because if they were to go walk down the pretty neighborhood, I call it, with the pretty rainbows and all that kind of stuff, the shop doors and a lot of places are not really welcoming to them, so they don't have a place to go. Everywhere they go, they're told you don't belong here, you're standing here, where are you supposed to be? And they don't know, necessarily where they're supposed to be. Ask LGBTQ social enterprises to provide transitional employment for youth. So this is huge. As someone who's working in an employment program that is geared towards LGBT, well, mostly with trans, but what I'm finding is that we're kind of tasked with this conversation to have conversations with Chicago-based businesses around making sure that Chicago-based business owners know what the law is. They know, kind of what our best practices when it comes to hiring, when it comes to interviewing, retention processes, when it comes to their training. However, it's almost this, we were talking about how it's almost advantageous to reach for the entire business community when we haven't got the ear yet of the LGBT business community. Gay and lesbian business owners who I think we need to appeal to them to have more of a stake in this, in that at one time, yes, I experienced discrimination and experienced certain things, and now I have a business, and now I have an opportunity to give back, whether that is in learning internships, whether that is in providing employment opportunities. But what's happening a lot when you talk about the mentorship piece is that the mentors or the adults or what have you are at work and are busy, but that's where the youth are trying to get to too. They're trying to get to work and professional spaces. So we talked a lot about how adults and businesses can kind of crack the doors open a little bit more and provide opportunities for youth and for trans people to be in professional spaces that they're normally left out of. Part of that talk was about around social enterprises and talking about transitional employment, and Katie, I can't remember what network she was with, but she talked a lot about how if they're working with something that they're tied to the outcomes, that whether it's the outcome is customer satisfaction, or but it's something that they have an invested interest in, that they know when I show up or if I don't show up, someone's missing me or something's not getting done. Another conversation that we had around that was youths thinking and saying, okay, well, the jobs that are available out there to me, I don't want to work at McDonald's, I don't want to work at Burger King, and having a perception of something beyond fast food or the entry level. However, we also talked about the importance of that first job, right? I've worked at Hardee's, I've worked selling stuff door to door and all that good stuff. So there is that importance of having that first job. But we talked about the fact that there's some people say, well, and one of the youth actually in the room spoke about some youth not having the motivation to want to go after a McDonald's job or to do a lot of different things, and we discussed how sometimes there's a missing conversation around value, because not just the youth but adults who are looking for work. A lot of times I hear a lot of adults, because the program I work with people 18 and over, so some of our clients are 18, some of them are 60. And we have people that are saying, well, I want to find just the easiest job. Find me whatever the easiest job is, I want that. And this perspective of looking for an easy job because work is a bad thing for some people in their mind, the idea of work, instead of this conversation of what do I have to offer, and feeling valuable when you're coming from a space, families, organizations that are miscommunicating your value to you, that are, selling you lies about what you're capable of doing. So we need these spaces that kind of rebuild this value system, and that can happen within like social enterprises, social enterprise models. I was even thinking like when I was in high school, we had the school newspaper, and it's things like that that build community. You're talking about your stories, you're talking about certain things, but there are responsibilities that go along with each position, whether you're the editor or you're a reporter or whatnot. And creating internships funded through HRC 100 and 6-week tracks. So this is interesting. The HRC lists those that know about the Corporate Equality Index. Businesses get a score as far as how inclusive they are and whatnot. But someone coming from the community, I'd be willing to bet that a 100 score does not necessarily mean that they are totally inclusive. So we do need to have sort of these accountability pieces with the HRC, and this would probably be one of those accountability pieces if those companies that have received a 100 score were able to provide some sort of internship or opportunity. Right? Yes, I heard a yes back there. And an okay. Just a short check. Yes. So, yeah, a lot of that too, I was going to say, is that a lot of LGBT youth that are experiencing homelessness are also sort of experiencing a cut short childhood. They have to kind of grow up very fast. And a lot of times when I'm doing the employment programs, they're really addressed towards adults. And so there is still this piece of expecting the youth to immediately jump into this adult role to start, taking care of yourself and doing all these adult things that we do. And again, I think the importance of those social enterprise models, things like things creative, innovative ideas that give them something to be a part of, but also some bit of responsibility are, and we can come up with a gazillion ideas here to approach the youth, but I think those are the ideas that are needed in order for youth to start to develop. It's sort of like a ramp into being completely adult-centered where, we're looking at numbers and reports and outcomes and all that good stuff all day. So job readiness, expand job readiness and entrepreneurial training with opportunities for job placement. See Inspiration Corporation, they have something like that. Put job training and job placement programs in place with long-term metrics reporting, and identify and create child care resources. So when we were talking a lot about this, I guess I'm not sure where the long-term metrics reporting comes in, but basically we talked about the whole revolving door around the programs and like retention. People know what to say in order to get whatever they think is going to be in a social service program, but we provide sort of programming that is focused on a higher retention, and that is able to collect the data to see people, kind of going from point A to point B. I think that's what we're talking about there. And expand job readiness, entrepreneurial trainings. Yes, one of the things that I think we have started to do a little bit is Chicago House and the Trans Life Center has started to collaborate with the Center on Halstead, and Center on Halstead, and so I will be on Mondays, except for today, which I'm here with you right now, but I have someone there right now in my place. We're doing a drop-in from 12 to 4 in the Cyber Center. And so TransWorks, it's a place for trans-identified people to drop in. Now in this space, since I will be facilitating this space, they can't just drop in and check Facebook. This is all about, it's an employment program, but everything's not like strictly employment. We may be having conversations that lead up to, the employment conversation. But part of that is that I used to run a web development graphic design business for 10 years before my job. And I hired a lot of people freelance and usually out of the country because that's what I could afford when I started my business. So by giving people these basic computer skills, like in a computer lab, data entry, these are things that when people are going through awkward transitional phases, not just trans people, but people in transit. When you're going through these transitional phases, and maybe it's hard to show up a certain way, but you can, as long as you can get to an internet connection, you can make money. So our idea here is to create these things where they can take businesses in their own hands and become freelancers and start to have an entrepreneurial mindset, which it may not be at the stage yet of starting a company, but it may be around the time management, things around, what jobs do I take on, what do I say yes to, what do I need in order to prepare myself for this job that I just took on. Yes. In the next slide maybe, or no? Yes, education. Education was another huge one. Expand GED programs in the LGBT community, like the BYC model. Focus on development of individual plans, include support services for FAFSA and college application completion. Match this to groups that provide scholarships, like the Point Foundation. Provide community support for an alternative education program launching this fall. So, working with a lot of the youth that come through, the GED is huge. A lot of people's education patterns have just been severely interrupted. And the GED, I think, just got a little, harder to access a little bit. It's a little bit more expensive. I think it's all on the computer now. It's great that we have the BYC model, and I have to say, like, the BYC model has been great for my clients that I'm working with that are 16 to 24. I send them directly over there, but then I have these clients that are outside 24, 25, 26, 27, 30, 35, so we need more models like BYC that are for our adults as well. And And let's see here. Yeah, I think, and one of the things we just talked about was just more alternative methods of receiving education and training, and in the areas. So say, for instance, I work on the north side, and a lot of my clients are coming from west and south side. So we don't have a lot of our programming on those, we need to collaborate basically. And some of the conversations we're having is that, hey, we over here, we have this great program. You over there, you have that great space. How can we collaborate together? Because everybody's trying to get into services, and I just want to make sure that everybody's getting into the services for the right reason and not just to keep their doors open. I know HIV is kind of, we're in a great place with HIV and whatnot, and the funds are dwindling down, and now people are getting into like trans services and other things. But let's just make sure we're getting into it for the right reasons. Get entrepreneurial, create entrepreneurial venture capitalism fund for LGBT business owners. I think too, like I said, when it comes to LGBT businesses and the business network, we do have quite an LGBT business community here in Chicago. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurial conversation and a lot of that, I think, needs to trickle down to those who don't normally have access to that conversation or to even know what that's all about. I mean, when you talk about, I think just in the languaging that this is accessible for a certain type of person. But I think for those who are, again, street-based or those who are just now coming and they're doing survival crimes, a lot of different things, like there's ways to talk about the skills that you learn in survival crimes and how to turn those into transitional skills. So I think people who are in those places, my deal is, my one call of action is people who are in employment spaces, especially if you're in a place to make decisions or to be able to do things. The issue is here, and Laverne Cox said this in one of her keynote speeches. She talked about the fact that trans people, and I'm sorry, I'm trans, but I mean everyone as well, but I'm speaking on behalf of trans right now. But trans people, especially trans women of color, need to be shown love in public spaces. Right? Out in the open. And what I mean by public spaces is like when you're not shown love in the home, when you're not shown love in your church, when you're not shown love in all of these spaces, then we are left out of a lot of opportunities. Opportunities for growth, opportunities for education, opportunities just to build skills, to do a lot of different things. So if you are in a place where you can create space for someone trans to just be completely and wholly who they are, that's what's needed. Every one of us can create some kind of space. You maybe like, I remember in school we used to have this like follow your parent to school day or something like that. Just where we can experience, trans people can experience being in a space that they're often locked out of, basically. I think that's it. No? Okay. Oh, yes. Address barriers, permanent address, phone numbers, work. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the work with banks, because that was a huge thing that came up in our conversations, was that when people go to our programs and they're given sometimes these gift cards, how do they budget a gift card? How do they save $5 out of the $25 on the gift card and then also pay the service fees for the gift card as well? So a lot of the conversation came up around having this financial literacy training as well as knowing how to manage and budget the finances of being a homeless youth that are usually in the debit card age, as one of the participants had pointed out, that we are in a debit card age. Address barriers, that's definitely huge, and we talk about this in like the TransWorks program of just around like using the TLC. Sometimes we let people use the TLC address. I know the BYC allows people to use the BYC address, especially on things like resumes. And a lot of times too, I would almost like, just as a little tip, We are in 2014. I want to encourage folks to not be so scared of technology and using technology to spread information, because I know we were talking about earlier about how do we get the information, and I find a lot. I'm 33, but I'm still like very, I grew up with these computers, and I find a lot in spaces that a lot of people are scared to use the technology. And the kids are living in this technology. They know it backwards and forwards. They can access the technology before they can access our doors. So we need to make sure that we're using technology to give our information out. But in this day and age, we don't necessarily need a physical address all the time on a resume. You can use an email address and a phone number. A lot of employers are not mailing things to you anyway these days. So. Yes, so questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
We only have time for one question.
That was me. I screwed up. Make your question good.
Actually, related to what you just said, I'm 56, so I have a fantasy that young people who know how to do a lot on my phone, who show me how to use my own phone, could be like personal media trainers or personal device trainers or something like that. And it's marketable. That's
Absolutely.
like who can make that happen? That's my question. I don't know the answer. I just have the question.
I can make it happen. Somebody, please. I can make it happen. Give me some money. I can make it happen.
And speaking of money, I know we only have time for one question, but I just wanted to point out that the National Black Justice Coalition has been working with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, to establish loans that are available for LGBT people specifically to be entrepreneurs. So, you want to find a stream of money, visit the NBJC's website, find that program. There are programs, money set aside specifically for people in this room to open up businesses that can then later create those internships that you're talking about.
Say the acronym, N.
In National Black Justice Coalition, NBJC. All right, thank you very much.